What's up, guys? I'm EJ and this is Kendall here, and today we're talking about the top big men in the 2019 NBA draft. Now, Kendall, we're going to be talking about not just 5 men, but 4 men as well. So it's going to be a mixture of guys that maybe we haven't seen other people rank together. So it's kind of could be a fun ranking in terms of some of the guys that we may look at as 3-4 guys or guys that are purely 5 men, and ranking all those guys together should be a fun list here.
Yeah, interesting crop of big men. Some high potential guys, some guys that are very safe, and obviously Zion Williamson. So he's kind of a mix of both.
He's kind of good.
He's a mix of both. He's a high potential guy, and he's pretty safe. But I would say it's not nearly as deep as the wing class, but in terms of comparing to the point guard class, I think there's a little more depth, and maybe even more depth from the wing position in terms of guys, maybe not 1 through 5, but 5 through 10. Sure. A lot of guys you could talk about in this big man class.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think as we compile my list, it was kind of difficult because, well, number one, it's so much better than everyone else, and everyone else is kind of all in the same pack. There are a lot of guys you could have mixed in here, especially when we're counting some of the combo forwards that would be included in this list. So let's get right to it. So I'll start since you did the other video we did on the wings. I'll start with my list. So number 5, I'm gonna go with Bol Bol. Big man, Oregon, 7'3", silky smooth 3-point shot, some guard skills as well. He would be higher on my list if it wasn't for the injury risk. That's really the only reason why he's this low. I know some people have questions about whether or not he can, withstand the physical play of the NBA, and that's a fair criticism with him. But I just think that when you have a guy that's so highly skilled and the NBA is downsizing so much, I don't think some of the issues you had with the game being too physical as much as an issue in 2019 as maybe it would be 10 years ago. I think the Porzingis comparisons are fair considering his skill level, but I just don't know about his health. So I had to put him at number 5 here, even though I think that he could easily be a top 2 or 3 talent when it comes to the bigs overall. Number 4, I went with Mfiondu Kabengele from Florida State. I think he's extremely underrated. He reminds me, I saw someone compare him to Wendell Carter. I think it was the guy from Draft Express.
Schmitz?
Yeah. And I think that's a really good comparison. He's an excellent shot blocker, probably a better shot blocker than even Carter was. He's got some stretch game. He can hit the 3. He has a pretty decent post-up game. Still a little bit of a raw talent, which is a little concerning considering he's older than a lot of these guys. But I think that the physical tools are there. He's got the basketball pedigree being related to the Dikembe Mutombo. He was very impressive every time I watched him at Florida State. So I have him pretty high here at number 4. Number 3, I'm going with my first Zag here, being the Gonzaga fan on this podcast and on this YouTube channel. I got Brandon Clarke. Super athletic player, super productive player. Can play probably 5 and 4. I know he's a little undersized, but I think in this NBA, he's kind of a perfect stretch 5. He can switch on the guards and guard guys on the perimeter. He's excellent on the break. He's a very high percentage guy around the basket, can score with the left hand, score with the right hand. Worried that he doesn't really bring you any 3-point shooting or any real stretch potential, but he's so good at everything else. He's also an excellent passer out of the high post. Really not too many weaknesses. Again, another guy you worry about age maybe being a little bit of an issue, but
23.
But I'd still like his skill level. So he's high on my list here, number 3. Number 2, going with another Zag. Got Rui Hachimura here, number 2. I think Rui's an interesting player because I feel like in the beginning of the season he was looked at as potentially a top 5 pick, and I think he was kind of the victim of people watching him too much. Honestly, I don't think that he really disappointed at all this year. He was a highly productive player, highly utilized and needed player for Gonzaga, a team that was a number 1 team in the country, a team that was a number 1 seed that went all the way to the Elite 8, and he was their most consistent player all season. He's got an excellent mid-range game, and I know the mid-range shot's going away, but I think the fact that he brings that to the table as an ISO scorer, he could push the break. He's a good defender. He's another really good athlete. He's really good. I mean, I get, again, you worry, is he a 3, is he a 4? I think he's probably leaning more 4 spot, but I think he gives you time at the 3 if you're playing on a bigger lineup. I just don't think there are too many basketball players. You're talking about, forget about position, you're talking about basketball players. I can't see how I could find maybe 6 or 7 guys that are better basketball players in this draft than Rui. So Rui Hachimura sits in number 2. Number 1, Zion Williamson. I mean, what more can we say about Zion? He's freak of nature. I think he's one of the most dominant players we've seen coming into the NBA draft in a long time. So he was a no-brainer for me, number 1. He's the kind of guy you could build your franchise around and maybe win championships with. So that's my list for the big men So what do you have for your 5?
Yeah, so my 5, a couple differences, but number 5, I'm going with Jaxson Hayes, freshman big man out of Texas. I feel like Jaxson Hayes is he's kind of a risk because he's kind of new to the game of basketball. You can tell he's very raw when he's out there. But the center position has been so dumbed down that you look at the requisite skills to be a solid NBA center. He has all of them. He has the athleticism, the rim running ability, the size, the rebounding ability. Very similar to another Texas big man, Jared Allen. I think they have kind of a similar profile. I think Jaxson Hayes, 3 years from now, could be a very, very good center in the NBA once you give him time to develop. He also could be a bust, but the center position is so dumbed down. And I don't think this is a great class. But at number 4, I'm looking at Bol Bol, who you mentioned earlier, EJ. I agree, talent-wise, I think he is a top 5 guy probably in this draft. You look at beyond the injury concerns, I can't really talk about them because I don't have his medical information. Sure. But if we're just even talking about him as a basketball player, there are red flags about his work ethic, his motor. They all run very low, it seems like. I can't speak for his work ethic, but his motor definitely on the court runs low. But people said the same thing about Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, they were like, his motor and his work ethic don't really seem to be there, but he averaged 20 and 10. So I didn't care at the time. Bol Bol's kind of the same thing. Yes, his motor and his work ethic don't really appear to be there, but at the same time, he did average 20, 10, and like 3 blocks. Yeah. So even if he's doing that, and Ben Simmons seems to have clearly revved up his motor a little bit in the NBA, if Bol Bol revs up his motor at all, and he stays healthy, he has way more skills than half of the NBA centers that are starting right now. He has way more ability, way more upside. For a guy, the rim protection that he provides better than half the dudes that are starting the league right now. The offensive skill set better than half the dudes in the league. So Bol Bol has a tremendous upside, just an injury risk. At number 3, I'm looking at Rui Hachimura. Hachimura, I very much like. I think he's a top 10 prospect in this draft. I feel like Hachimura is in a situation where we look at him, and a lot of people look at him at the Gonzaga Hachimura, but when you watch him play for Team Japan, he's even more prolific and even more like an NBA player, I think, than even when he plays with Gonzaga. He's a matchup nightmare. We talk about tweener, but I think he fits the matchup nightmare mold where you put him at the 4, he's quicker than most guys, he can play on the perimeter, excellent in the mid-range, mid-post, has a little bit of Kawhi Leonard in his game in terms of how he plays. You put him at the 3, he can bang, he can bully guys in the post. Great rebounder, great finishing under the rim. He's going to have to improve his jump shot if he wants to play minutes at the 3, but right now I think he can step in and be an NBA 4, starting NBA 4 from day one on most teams around the league. So I like Hachimura a lot. And I think he's a lot of upside, considering even though he's 21, you can tell he's still raw and trying to develop parts of his game. At number 2, I'm going with another international prospect. I'm going with Goga Bitadze, kid from the Republic of Georgia. Goga is a very interesting prospect because he was the MVP of the Adriatic League, which you talk about guys that have come from that league, big men of his profile, Nikola Jokic, Jusuf Nurkic, Dario Saric, guys that were also high-level guys. Jokic and Saric were also MVP of that league, and we see what they have become as well as Nurkic. Ivica Zubac also came from that league. He's as good as those guys were playing over there, and we're talking about a guy that the way he plays, he definitely has a little bit of Nurkic in him. I also see a little bit of Paul Gasol. I feel like if you watch Bitadze, if his last name was Gasol, we wouldn't blink. We'd be like, if his last name was Gasol, he'd be a top 10 pick in this draft.
I think so.
Yeah, so I think, I think Bitadze has a very good chance to be a starting NBA center from day one, and could end up being an all-star, if the right things work out, if he develops a jump shot, if his defense can translate. But he's very, very good finisher around the rim, very skilled. And number 1, Zion Williamson, not really much of a shock. I won't spend too much time on Zion, but, the only risk, obviously there's plenty of reward there for Zion, yeah. But the only risk for me is just injury. I think a guy with his body type, the way he plays, would not be shocked if he dealt with injuries throughout his career. He dealt with injuries in high school and college, so It's not impossible to believe. So, you just hope that that's not the case. And if he stays healthy, the guy is going to be an all-star very, very soon in his NBA career. But I think overall, though, I think it's a solid class.
So other guys we had on this list, who were some of the guys that just missed the cut for you?
I looked at Sekou Doumbouya, who I thought had a lot of Pascal Siakam in his game. I think he's just very raw, and so is Jaxson Hayes. But he's just more of a mystery to me. You probably have to sit down and watch even more Sekou to feel more comfortable than Jaxson Hayes, is a guy who I've seen play against competition. There are other archetypes that I can compare him to. Doumbouya is really you're throwing a dart. You're throwing a dart at a dartboard, drafting him. And I looked at Brandon Clarke.
I was going to ask you about that, because I had him at 3. You wouldn't have him on your list.
Yeah, he was probably 7. I think he's just the age, and he has no star potential to me. I mean, now the thing about Brandon Clarke that's interesting is that his archetype doesn't fit into anybody in the league, and that concerns some people. But you know who else is like that? Draymond Green.
Yeah.
There's no players ever been like Draymond Green in the NBA. Nikola Jokic is another guy. The only other guy we can compare him to is Sabonis, Arvydas Sabonis, who never really played in his prime.
Yeah.
Brandon Clarke could be that type of guy where he's a star, but just in his own right. But I can't think of a player like Brandon Clarke that became a star player. He just reminds me of a role player. So I think with age, I just think the floor is low enough to where I think I wouldn't draft him in the top 10.
And sometimes I think we look at high ceilings and we get enamored by that, and I don't disagree that I think Clarke's ceiling seems limited, but I just feel like he's such a sure thing. I mean, to me,
his PER is the highest we've had in the college era outside of Zion.
And if you watch these games, I had the luxury of watching Gonzaga play probably 20 times this year. I mean, it's not a fluke. I mean, this guy is a truly dominant player around the basket in terms of finishing, and I saw him play against guys who were 7 feet tall, guys who were smaller. It didn't matter. I had
the wingspan really stuff also kind of bothers me a little bit.
Yeah, he's like a 6'8" wingspan for a guy who's 6'8", which is extremely rare.
Now he's similar to Zion in that he leaps. He's such a great leaper that the wingspan won't kill him that much. But
yeah, I also thought about Sekou as well. Just a little too raw for me. I probably also want to see him improve his jump shot a little bit to be more consistent.
Right.
Then he could have made my list. I also thought about Jaxson Hayes. I like P.J. Washington. He's another guy, though, you worry a little bit with injury history, what to deal with his foot. Will he be ready to go by next season? And the kid you had from Europe who you had high, I like him, but with some of these European guys, it is kind of like you don't know for sure. I don't know. I couldn't put him as high as 2, like you did.
Yeah.
High skill level, but I do worry about the athletic profile.
Yeah.
And can what he brings to the table work against more athletic players in the NBA?
Yeah. And can he defend?
And that's the big
guards. Nowadays, you have to be able to defend guards.
Yeah, we saw the NBA Finals where Cousins got eaten alive in those pick and rolls, and that's going to be a problem for him, I think, potentially. But I think that's a good place to wrap this video, guys. So thank you guys so much for watching. Who do you guys think should be the top big men in this draft? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, New Generation Media, and make sure you check out our podcast, New Generation Sports Talk. You can find that on the New Generation Podcast Network on SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn. That's Kendall. I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.